Okay. So in your practice, you've had these women come in, and I'm sure, let's just make up a typical client that she's 50 years old, she's overweight, she was, um, perfectly healthy when she was younger, but she's seen her health decline over the last 10 or 15
Right.
years.
Hmm.
Um, what is it? What is it that you're telling them? Or let's start with tests. What is it that you're going to test first of all to see what your baseline is, and then what is some of the levers that you're going to try to pull to get them to where they need to be?
Okay. That's a good question. So, all right. So we have to start with this. Every single person that I see is a unique individual, and I don't have, and I pride myself on this. I don't have a cookbook approach to anything that I do, and I also utilize the fact that I've been doing this for so long that I it leads me away in a lot of times from a lot of testing, because here's the problem with testing. Testing for the most part is established based on a median of a reference range that really doesn't have all that much significance to much of anything. So,
Okay.
did you say? So,
No, I said okay. Yeah.
okay, so, a, a typical issue that you're talking about would be this. I get a woman who's 50 years old, like you said. She comes in to see me, and she has slowed down in her ability to do what she used to do to be able to lose body fat. She's gaining weight. She's more tired than she used to be. She's having issues with inability to stay asleep through the night, not sleeping as well as she used to, and a whole host of other things. And so what we would look at is I would run, usually I would run general blood work on that. I might take that further, but I think what I want to establish first is here's the way that my mind is thinking through this. So this woman is showing me that one of the most common problems I see, and that is this. She is not full menopausal yet, but she is now created this estrogen dominance where she is still having periods, but she's starting to show all of these different signs of what look like hypothyroidism, right? So she's got, her skin's getting drier, her sleep is disturbed, she's gaining weight, she can't lose weight the way that she used to, she's sluggish, she has brain fog, she hits a wall at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, can't figure out what that's all about. On and on and on. So she's got all of these symptoms that look like you would, that if we went and ran a profile on her for a thyroid panel and she actually did have thyroid pathology, it would come back and say she's hypothyroid. But she doesn't have that, right? It comes back, the thyroid tests are normal, but she's got just about 9 out of 10 symptoms that are suspect of thyroid deficiency, right? Well, here's what's going on there is the fact that this estrogen dominance that I'm talking about, meaning the separation between estrogen and progesterone, is because of estrogen as a thyroid antagonist, and it binds up the receptor sites on the cell that where thyroid hormone is supposed to plug into the cell and tell it what to do, that she is developing all of these hypothyroid symptoms, but the blood test is going to come back and say that her thyroid numbers are normal, at least the most overt ones that most doctors will typically run, like a TSH level. It will say normal because she has enough thyroid hormone circulating in her bloodstream, but it's not getting into the target tissues that it needs to get. So she's developing all of these slowed metabolism, lack of thyroid hormone without an overt thyroid problem on a test, right? So a physician it needs to be able to understand this chemistry and go, okay, this is not a diagnosable thyroid problem. But we are creating hypothyroid symptoms by the mismatch of 2 of the female hormonal ratios that are out of balance, right? So this would be a classic one. And when we take that patient, and what we do is we work on reestablishing a better ratio between estrogen and progesterone. And we do that in a couple of different ways. One is we want to clear out more estrogen from their body. There's a number of things that we can use to do that. Better liver function, better diet. Diet plays a huge role there. There's some nutritional supplementation that I would like to use there for sure. Something called diindol methane, which is a chemical constituent, phytonutrient that comes from cruciferous vegetables, although you really would have a hard time eating enough broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts to be able to do this. So we usually use a supplement of this substance. And what it does is it binds up excess estrogen, clears it out of the liver, brings that estrogen dominance down a little bit. And then we want to support better progesterone function. We might use, the simplest way, most non-aggressive way is to use something like the active form of vitamin B6 called pyridoxal 5-phosphate. If we need to get a little more aggressive, we might go into using a botanical substance for that, like chaste tree or vitex. And then a lot of times I will actually just put a woman on bioidentical progesterone, which is very safe and natural and effective to be able to bring the progesterone up, shift the estrogen down, take the burden off the thyroid, open the receptor sites, set her metabolism back to where it should be, and then she gets the results that she should have been getting. And so it's a little complicated. I'm sure it sounds that way, but at the same time, it's a good way of being able to not manipulate through pharmacological stuff and say we need to rearrange and shift some of those biochemical pathways back into their natural order, so to speak. And that's just a better way to practice.
What about over-the-counter progesterone creams? Are they worth looking into?
The problem with that is a couple-fold. One is that most of the over-the-counter progesterone creams are not really progesterone at all. What they are is they're what we call a wild yam extract, right? So one of the things about there's a certain plant called Diascorea, which we call the Mexican wild yam, and it has a chemical nature to it that supports progesterone levels in a woman, but it's not really progesterone. The problem with that is that when a woman reaches a certain part of perimenopause and her ovaries are no longer able to produce the amount of progesterone that they used to, there is nothing about a progesterone precursor like Mexican wild yam that's really going to do anything for you. You now reach the level where you have to use actually real progesterone. That's not what a lot of these creams are. They're just, they're this precursor that could be maybe very useful to a woman in her late 30s who still has pretty strong ovaries and just needs a little bit of support. But so anyway, so one thing is that a lot of what's out there is not, and certainly not what we would call USP pharmaceutical grade natural progesterone. And so it's very misleading. Number two is I don't really, as much as I want to support natural health care, there's a certain part of it. And when we're talking about hormonal balancing or whatnot, this is where I would draw a line of, you don't want to do this on your own. You really don't. This is not something you want to go out and read a internet article on and decide to go down to the health food store and start playing around with creams and things like this that manipulate hormones or whatnot. For, again, back to, first of all, it's probably not going to be very effective. And number two, you need some guidance in this. This is outside of, the lay public's realm of what they're understanding, and they potentially can do some damage to themselves. And then the third part of that is, unfortunately, this is an unregulated, business out there, and companies are unfortunately able to put out products on the floor that don't have what they say they have in them and aren't well thought through and could potentially do more harm than good. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But